I remember the exact moment I realized my family was built on a lie. It was a Tuesday evening in late September, and the air in our living room felt thick and heavy, like the humidity before a thunderstorm rolls in. The scent of my mother's pot roast drifted from the kitchen, mingling with the faint smell of my father's aftershave and the musty odor of the old leather couch we had owned since before I was born. The television was on. Some game show with laughter that nobody was really watching, and the light from the screen flickered across the walls in shades of blue and white. My older brother Marcus sat in a recliner, the good one that nobody else was allowed to use, his feet propped up like he owned the place, which, in a way, I suppose he did. Marcus was 24 years old, and I was 19. 5 years separated us, but it might as well have been a lifetime. From the moment I could form memories, Marcus had been the golden child, the one who could do no wrong, the one who got everything he wanted while I scrambled for scraps of attention and approval. When Marcus wanted a car for his 16th birthday, our parents bought him a nearly new Honda Accord, silver and shining, with leather seats that still had that new car smell. When I turned 16, I got a card with $50 in it and a lecture about responsibility and earning my own way. When Marcus decided he wanted to go to college out of state, our parents paid for everything: tuition, room, and board, spending money, the works. When I graduated high school, I was told that community college was more practical and that I should live at home to save money. The unfairness of it all had been eating at me for years, a slow burn in my chest that never quite went away. I had tried to talk to my parents about it, tried to make them see how differently they treated us, but they always had excuses. Marcus was the oldest, they said. Marcus had worked so hard, they said. Marcus deserved it, they said. And I would nod and swallow my anger and go back to my tiny bedroom at the end of the hall, the one with the window that stuck and a radiator that clanked all night in the winter, while Marcus had the master bedroom on the second floor with the attached bathroom and the view of the backyard. But that Tuesday evening, everything changed. I was sitting on the floor, my back against the wall, doing homework for my psychology class. The carpet was rough under my palms, worn thin from decades of foot traffic, and I could feel the cold from the hardwood underneath seeping through. My mother was setting the table in the dining room, the clink of plates and silverware a familiar rhythm. My father was in his usual spot on the couch, reading the newspaper, the pages rustling every time he turned them, and Marcus was scrolling through his phone, his thumb moving in lazy circles, occasionally letting out a small laugh at something he saw. Then my father cleared his throat, that particular sound he made when he had something important to say. It was a deep, rumbling noise that always made my stomach tighten with anxiety. I looked up from my textbook, and I saw that my mother had stopped setting the table and was standing in the doorway between the dining room and the living room, her hands clasped in front of her, her knuckles white. The light from the chandelier above the dining table cast long shadows across her face, making her look older than her 48 years. "Your mother and I need to talk to you both," my father said, folding his newspaper and setting it on the coffee table. His voice was steady, but there was something underneath it, something that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. Marcus looked up from his phone, his eyebrows raised in mild curiosity. I closed my textbook and pulled my knees up to my chest, wrapping my arms around them. My mother walked into the living room and sat down on the arm of the couch, next to my father. She was wearing her favorite cardigan, the blue one with the little pearl buttons, and she kept fidgeting with the hem of it, pulling it down over her hips, then smoothing it out, then pulling it down again. The smell of her perfume, something floral and sweet, wafted over to me, and for a moment I felt like a little kid again, safe and protected. But that feeling disappeared as soon as my father started talking. "There is something we have been keeping from you," he said, looking first at Marcus, then at me. "Something we should have told you a long time ago, but we did not know how. We thought we were protecting you, but now we realize that we were wrong." My heart started to pound in my chest, a heavy, insistent thud that I could feel in my throat. I glanced at Marcus, and for the first time in my life, I saw uncertainty on his face. He set his phone down on the armrest of the recliner, and his hand was shaking slightly. "What is it?" my mother said softly, and I realized she was not talking to us. She was talking to my father, prompting him, giving him permission to continue. My father took a deep breath, and I could see his chest rise and fall under his flannel shirt. He reached over and took my mother's hand, and they sat there for a moment, just holding on to each other, and I knew with absolute certainty that whatever they were about to say was going to change everything. "Marcus is not your biological brother," my father said, and the words hung in the air like smoke, thick and choking. I felt like I had been punched in the stomach, all the air rushing out of my lungs at once. I stared at my father, then at my mother, then at Marcus, tried to make sense of what I had just heard. Marcus had gone completely still, his face pale, his eyes wide. "What do you mean?" Marcus said, and his voice cracked on the last word. "What do you mean I am not their brother?" My mother started to cry, soft, hiccuping sobs that made her shoulders shake. She pressed her hand to her mouth, trying to hold it in, but the tears kept coming, streaming down her cheeks and dripping off her chin. My father squeezed her hand tighter and looked at Marcus with an expression I had never seen before, something like guilt and sorrow and love, all mixed together. "You are my son," my father said, "but you are not hers. Your biological mother was someone I was with before I met your mom. She got pregnant, and she did not want to keep you. She was young, she was scared, and she thought you would be better off with me. So I took you and I raised you, and when I met your mom a few years later, she agreed to raise you as her own." I felt like the room was spinning, like the floor had dropped out from under me. I looked at my mother, and she was nodding, her face wet with tears. I looked at Marcus, and he was staring at my father like he had never seen him before. "So she is not my mother," Marcus said slowly, pointing at my mother. "And he said, pointing at me, is not my brother. You are brothers." My mother said quickly, her voice thick with emotion, "You are brothers in every way that matters. I have loved you since the day I met you, Marcus. I have loved you like you were my own. You are my son." "But I am not," Marcus said, and his voice was flat, emotionless. "I am not your son. I am his son," he said, nodding at my father, "and some woman I have never met. Some woman who did not want me. Marcus," my father said, standing up, reaching out toward him. But Marcus jerked away, standing up so fast that the recliner rocked back and forth. He looked at all of us, his eyes wild, his chest heaving, and then he turned and walked out of the room. I heard his footsteps on the stairs, heavy and fast, and then the sound of his bedroom door slamming shut, the whole house shaking with the force of it. The silence that followed was deafening. My mother was still crying, her face buried in her hands. My father was standing in the middle of the room, his arms hanging at his sides, looking lost. And I was still sitting on the floor, my back against the wall, trying to process what had just happened. "Why?" I finally said, and my voice sounded strange to my own ears, small and distant. "Why did you tell us now?" My father turned to look at me, and I saw that his eyes were red, like he was fighting back tears of his own. "Because Marcus has been asking questions," he said. "He found some old documents in the attic, papers from when he was born. He confronted us last week, and we told him the truth. And we realized that we needed to tell you too. It was not fair to keep it from you any longer." I nodded slowly, but I did not really understand. I did not understand any of it. My whole life, I had been jealous of Marcus, resentful of the way our parents treated him. And now I knew why. He was not really my brother. He was my half-brother. And my mother, the woman who had raised him, was not his real mother. And suddenly, all those years of preferential treatment made a sick kind of sense. They had been trying to make up for something, trying to compensate for the fact that he was different, that he did not really belong. But that realization did not make me feel better. If anything, it made me feel worse, because it meant that my parents had been lying to me my entire life. It meant that the family I thought I knew was not real. It meant that everything I had believed about my place in the world was built on a foundation of secrets and half-truths. I stood up, my legs shaky, and walked past my parents without saying another word. I went to my room and closed the door and sat on my bed in the darkness, listening to the muffled sound of my mother crying and my father trying to comfort her. And I thought about Marcus, alone in his room, dealing with the knowledge that his entire identity had just been shattered. The next few days were unbearable. The house felt different, like the walls themselves were holding their breath, waiting for something to break. Marcus barely came out of his room. I would hear him moving around up there late at night, pacing back and forth, the floorboards creaking under his weight. Sometimes I would hear him on the phone, his voice low and angry, though I could never make out the words. My mother spent most of her time in the kitchen, cooking elaborate meals that nobody ate, her way of trying to fix things that could not be fixed with food. The smell of baking bread and simmering sauces filled the house, but it only made everything feel more wrong, like she was trying to cover up the rot with a scent of normalcy. My father retreated into his work, leaving early in the morning and coming home late at night, his face drawn and tired. When he was home, he would sit in the living room with a glass of whiskey, the ice cubes clinking against the glass, staring at nothing. I tried to talk to him once, asked him how he was doing, but he just patted my shoulder and said everything would be fine, even though we both knew it would not be. As for me, I felt like I was walking through a fog. I went to my classes, took notes, turned in assignments, but none of it felt real. I kept thinking about all the times I had complained about Marcus getting special treatment, all the times I had felt like the lesser child, the afterthought. And now I knew the truth, and it did not make me feel vindicated. It made me feel hollow. It was Friday night, 5 days after the revelation, when Marcus finally came downstairs. I was in the living room, pretending to watch television, but really just staring at the screen, without seeing anything. The house was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of my mother moving around upstairs. Then I heard footsteps on the stairs, slow and deliberate, and Marcus appeared in the doorway. He looked terrible. His hair was greasy and uncombed, sticking up in odd directions. His eyes were bloodshot, with dark circles underneath them that made him look like he had not slept in days. He was wearing the same clothes he had been wearing on Tuesday, a gray t-shirt and sweatpants, and they were wrinkled and stained. The smell of stale sweat and unwashed skin wafted off him, sharp and unpleasant. "We need to talk," he said, his voice rough and scratchy. I nodded and muted the television. Marcus came into the room and sat down on the couch, but not in his usual spot. He sat on the edge, his elbows on his knees, his hands clasped together. I could see his leg bouncing up and down, a nervous habit he had had since we were kids. "I have been thinking," he said, not looking at me, "about everything, about why they treated me differently, about why I always got more. And I think I understand now." I waited, not sure what to say. Marcus took a deep breath and finally looked at me, and I was shocked by the pain I saw in his eyes. It was raw and deep, the kind of pain that changes a person. "They felt guilty," he said. "Dad felt guilty for getting some woman pregnant, and then taking me away from her. And Mom felt guilty for not being my real mother. So they overcompensated. They gave me everything because they thought that would make up for the fact that I was not really part of this family, that I was some kind of charity case." "You were not a charity case," I said, and I was surprised to find that I meant it. Despite everything, despite all the resentment I had carried for so many years, I did not want Marcus to feel that way. "You were their son. You are their son." Marcus laughed, but it was a bitter, hollow sound. "Am I though? Because it does not feel like it. It feels like I've been living a lie my whole life. It feels like everything I thought I knew about myself was fake." I did not know what to say to that. So I just sat there, letting the silence stretch between us. Outside, I could hear the wind picking up, rattling the windows, and the first drops of rain starting to fall, tapping against the glass like tiny fingers. "I want to find her," Marcus said suddenly. "My real mother. I want to know who she is, why she gave me up, what her life is like now. I need to know." My stomach clenched. "Have you talked to Dad about this?" Marcus shook his head. "Not yet, but I am going to. I have a right to know where I came from. I have a right to know who I am." Before I could respond, we heard footsteps on the stairs, and my father appeared in the doorway. He must have heard us talking, because his face was tense, his jaw clenched. He looked at Marcus, then at me, then back at Marcus. "I heard what you said," my father said quietly, "and I understand. But I need you to understand something, too. Your mother, your biological mother, she made it very clear that she did not want to be part of your life. She signed away her rights. She asked me never to contact her again, and I have honored that for 24 years. Marcus stood up, his hands balled into fists at his sides. That was her choice 24 years ago. Maybe she feels differently now. Maybe she wants to know me. You do not get to make that decision for me. My father's face flushed red, and I could see a vein pulsing in his temple. I am trying to protect you, he said, his voice rising. I am trying to keep you from getting hurt. What if you find her, and she wants nothing to do with you? What if she slams the door in your face? What then? Then at least I will know, Marcus shouted back. At least I will have tried. At least I will not spend the rest of my life wondering. The two of them stood there, facing each other, the tension so thick I could almost taste it, metallic and sharp like blood. My mother appeared at the top of the stairs, her hand on the railing, her face pale and frightened. The rain was coming down harder now, drumming against the roof, and a flash of lightning lit up the room, followed by a crack of thunder that made us all jump. Fine, my father said finally, his voice cold and flat. Fine. You want to find her? I will give you her name. I will give you everything I know. But do not come crying to me when it all falls apart. He turned and walked out of the room, his footsteps heavy on the hardwood floor. We heard him go into his study and slam the door, the sound echoing through the house. My mother came down the stairs, her hand pressed her chest, her breathing quick and shallow. Marcus, she said, her voice pleading. Please, please do not do this. You are going to tear this family apart. Marcus looked at her, and for a moment I thought he might back down. But then his expression hardened, and he shook his head. This family was already torn apart, he said. You just did not tell us until now. He walked past her and went back upstairs, and a moment later I heard his door close, softer this time, but somehow more final. My mother stood there in the middle of the living room, her arms wrapped around herself, tears streaming down her face. I got up and went to her, putting my arm around her shoulders, and she leaned into me, her body shaking with sobs. I am so sorry, she whispered. I am so sorry. We thought we were doing the right thing. We thought we were protecting you both. I know, I said, even though I was not sure I did know. I was not sure of anything anymore. That night, I lay in bed listening to the storm rage outside, the wind howling and the rain lashing against the windows. I thought about Marcus, about the look on his face when he said he wanted to find his biological mother. I thought about my parents, about the weight of the secret they had carried for so long. And I thought about myself, about how my entire understanding of my family had been upended in a matter of minutes. I must have fallen asleep eventually, because I woke up to sunlight streaming through my window and the smell of coffee drifting up from the kitchen. I got dressed and went downstairs, and I found my father sitting at the kitchen table, a manila folder in front of him. He looked like he had aged 10 years overnight, his face gray and haggard, his eyes sunken. Marcus came down a few minutes later, showered and dressed in clean clothes, but still looking exhausted. He sat down across from my father, and they stared at each other for a long moment. Then my father pushed the folder across the table. Her name is Jennifer Calloway, my father said. Or, at least, it was, she might have gotten married. Change her name. This is her last known address, from 24 years ago. Her social security number. Her date of birth. Everything I have. Marcus opened the folder and looked at the papers inside, his hands trembling slightly. He did not say anything, just nodded once, then closed the folder and stood up. Thank you, he said, and his voice was barely above a whisper. He tucked the folder under his arm and walked out of the kitchen. A moment later, I heard the front door open and close, and then the sound of his car starting up and pulling out of the driveway. My father put his head in his hands, and I saw his shoulders start to shake. I had never seen my father cry before, and it was one of the most disturbing things I had ever witnessed. I did not know what to do, so I just sat there, my hands wrapped around my coffee mug, feeling the warmth seep into my palms, and waited for the moment to pass. Marcus did not come home that night, or the next night, or the night after that. My mother called him over and over, leaving voicemails that went from concerned to frantic, to angry and back, to concerned again. He finally texted her on the third day, a short message that said he was fine, he was staying with a friend, and he needed some space. That was it. No explanation. No reassurance. Just those few words that did nothing to ease the worry that had settled over our house like a heavy blanket. My mother stopped cooking. She would stand in the kitchen, staring at the refrigerator, and then just walk away. My father threw himself into work even more, sometimes not coming home until after midnight, smelling like coffee and exhaustion. And I tried to keep going to my classes, try to focus on my assignments, but my mind kept wandering back to Marcus, wondering where he was, what he was doing, whether he had found her yet. It was almost 2 weeks later when Marcus finally came home. It was a Thursday afternoon, and I was in my room studying when I heard his car pull into the driveway. I went to the window and looked out, and I saw him sitting in the driver's seat, his hands on the steering wheel, his head bowed. He sat there for a long time, maybe 10 minutes, maybe longer, and then he finally got out and walked the front door. I met him in the hallway. He looked different somehow, older maybe, or just more worn down. His face was thinner, his eyes harder. He nodded at me but did not say anything, just walked past me and into the living room where my mother was sitting on the couch, a book open in her lap that she was not reading. When she saw him, she jumped up, the book falling to the floor with a soft thud. "Marcus," she said, and her voice broke on his name. She started toward him, her arms outstretched, but he held up his hand, stopping her. "I found her," he said. "I found Jennifer." My mother froze, her arms still half raised, her face going pale. My father appeared in the doorway, having heard Marcus's voice, and he stood there, his briefcase still in his hand, waiting. And my father said, his voice carefully neutral. Marcus sat down in the recliner, his recliner, and leaned back, closing his eyes for a moment. When he opened them again, they were wet with unshed tears. "She lives about 3 hours from here," he said. "She is married. She has 2 kids, a boy and a girl, 10 and 8 years old. She works as a nurse at a hospital. She has a nice house, a nice life. Did you talk to her?" My mother asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Marcus nodded. "I showed up at her house. I knocked on the door. She answered, and I told her who I was." The silence that followed was suffocating. I could hear the clock on the wall ticking, each second stretching out impossibly long. My mother sank back down onto the couch, her hand pressed to her mouth. My father set his briefcase down and came into the room, sitting down next to my mother. "What did she say?" my father asked. Marcus laughed, but it was a broken, painful sound. "She said she was sorry. She said she had thought about me over the years. Wonder how I turned out. She said she was glad I was okay. And then she said that she could not have me in her life. That her husband does not know about me. That her kids do not know about me. That I would complicate things. That it would be better if I just left and did not come back." "Oh, Marcus," my mother said, and she started to cry, tears streaming down her face. "I am so sorry. I am so sorry." Marcus looked at her, and I saw something shift in his expression, something soften. "You were right," he said to my father. "You tried to warn me, and I did not listen. I thought she wouldn't know me. I thought she would be happy to see me. But I was just a reminder of a mistake she made a long time ago. I was just a problem she thought she had gotten rid of." He put his face in his hands, and his shoulders started to shake. My mother got up and went to him, kneeling down in front of the recliner, and this time he did not push her away. She wrapped her arms around him, and he leaned into her, and they stayed like that for a long time, both of them crying, while my father and I watched, not knowing what to do or say. After a while, Marcus pulled away and wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. "I am sorry," he said, looking at my mother. "I am sorry for what I said. You are my mother. You have always been my mother, and I should not have made you feel like you were not." My mother cupped his face in her hands, her thumbs brushing away his tears. "You are my son," she said fiercely. "You have always been my son. From the moment I met you, you were mine, and nothing will ever change that." Marcus nodded, and they hugged again, and I felt something loosen in my chest, something that had been tight and painful for weeks. My father came over and put his hand on Marcus's shoulder, and Marcus reached up and covered with his own, and for the first time since that terrible Tuesday evening, we felt like a family again. But things were not the same. They could not be. Too much had been said. Too much had been revealed. Over the next few weeks, we all tried to find a new normal, a new way of being together that acknowledged the truth instead of hiding from it. My parents stopped treating Marcus like he was fragile, stopped overcompensating for something that could not be fixed with money or privileges. And Marcus, for his part, seemed to let go of some of the entitlement he had carried, the assumption that he deserved more just because. We started having family dinners again, all four of us sitting around the table, passing dishes, and talking about our days. The conversations were sometimes awkward, sometimes stilted, but they were real. We were not pretending anymore. We were not hiding behind lies and secrets. We were just a family, messy and complicated and imperfect, but a family nonetheless. One night, about a month after Marcus came back, we were sitting in the living room after dinner. My mother was knitting, the needles clicking together in a soothing rhythm. My father was reading a book, his reading glasses perched on the end of his nose. Marcus was on his laptop, probably looking at job postings, and I was scrolling through my phone, not really looking at anything in particular. I had been thinking, Marcus said suddenly, and we all looked up. I had been thinking about what happened, about everything, and I realized something. I spent so much time being angry about the privileges I had, about being treated differently, that I never stopped to appreciate what I actually had. I had two parents who loved me, who wanted me, who raised me. I had a brother, he said, looking at me, who put up with my crap even when I did not deserve it. I had a home, and I almost threw all that away because I was looking for something that was never really there. You were looking for answers, my father said gently. There is nothing wrong with that. Maybe, Marcus said, but I think I was also looking for an excuse to feel sorry for myself, to feel like a victim. And when I met Jennifer, when she rejected me, I realized that I was not a victim. I was just a person, like everyone else, trying to figure out where I belong. You belong here, my mother said, setting down her knitting. You have always belonged here. Marcus smiled, and it was a real smile, the first genuine one I had seen from him in weeks. I know, he said. I know that now. We sat there in comfortable silence for a while, the only sounds the ticking of the clock and the soft rustle of pages as my father turned them. And I thought about how much had changed in such a short time, how a single revelation had torn our family apart and then somehow brought us back together stronger than before. But there was still something I needed to say, something that had been weighing on me since that first night. I cleared my throat, and everyone looked at me. I need to apologize, too, I said. I spent so many years being jealous of Marcus, being resentful, that I never really tried to be a good brother. I never tried to understand why things were the way they were. I just assumed the worst and let it eat away at me. Marcus looked at me, surprised. You do not have anything to apologize for, he said. I was a jerk. I took everything for granted. I acted like I was better than you. You had every right to be resentful. I shook my head. Maybe, but I could have talked to you about it. I could have tried to have a relationship with you instead of just being angry all the time. And I am sorry I did not. Marcus got up and came over to where I was sitting on the floor. He held out his hand, and I took it, and he pulled me to my feet. Then he hugged me, a real hug, tight and warm, and I hugged him back. We are good, he said into my ear. We are going to be okay. And in that moment, I believed him. I believed that we were going to be okay, that our family was going to survive this, that we were going to come out the other side better for it. The weeks turned into months, and slowly, carefully, we rebuilt what had been broken. It was not easy. There were still moments of tension, still conversations that veered too close to painful territory and had to be redirected. But we were trying, all of us, and that counted for something. Marcus got a job at a marketing firm downtown, and he moved into his own apartment about 20 minutes away. It was a small place, a one-bedroom on the third floor of an old building that smelled like pine cleaner, and had thin walls that let you hear the neighbors arguing at all hours. But it was his, and he was proud of it. He invited us over for dinner one Saturday night, and my mother fussed over the lack of curtains and the mismatched furniture. But I could see she was happy that he was making his own way, standing on his own 2 feet. I continued with my classes at community college, but I started to feel less bitter about it. I realized that my path did not have to look like Marcus's path, that there was no single right way to build a life. I started thinking about what I actually wanted to do, not what I thought I should do or what would make my parents proud, but what would make me happy. I had always been good with my hands, good at fixing things, and I started looking into trade schools, programs for electricians and plumbers and HVAC technicians. My father was surprised when I told him, but he was supportive, and that meant more to me than I expected. It was early December when things took another turn. The air had gotten cold, that biting, dry cold that makes your nose run and your fingers ache. The trees were bare, their branches black against the gray sky, and there was talk of snow coming, though it had not arrived yet. I was home for the weekend, doing laundry and raiding the refrigerator, when Marcus showed up unannounced. He looked agitated, his face flushed, his movements jerky and quick. He barely said hello before he asked where our parents were. My mother was at the grocery store, and my father was in his study, working on something for his job. Marcus went straight to the study and knocked on the door, not waiting for an answer before pushing it open. I followed him, curious and a little worried. My father looked up from his computer, his reading glasses sliding down his nose, and frowned when he saw Marcus's expression. "What is wrong?" he asked. Standing up, Marcus pulled out his phone and held it up, his hand shaking. "She contacted me," he said. "Jennifer. She sent me a message on social media. She wants to talk." My father's face went pale, and he sat back down heavily in his chair. The leather creaked under his weight, and I could smell the faint scent of his cologne mixed with the mustiness of old books that lined the shelves. "What did she say?" he asked quietly. Marcus looked at his phone, scrolling through the message. "She said she has been thinking about me. She said she made a mistake when she turned me away. She said she wants to get to know me, that she wants me to be part of her life. She said she told her husband about me, and he is okay with it. She wants to meet again." I felt my stomach twist. This was not good. This was the exact thing my father had warned about, the thing that could hurt Marcus all over again. But I could also see the hope in Marcus's eyes, the desperate, fragile hope that maybe, just maybe, this time would be different. "What are you going to do?" my father asked, and his voice was carefully neutral, giving nothing away. Marcus put his phone back in his pocket and ran his hand through his hair, making it stick up in odd angles. "I do not know," he said. "Part of me wants to tell her to go to hell. She had her chance, and she blew it. But another part of me wants to believe her, wants to think that maybe she really does regret what she did, that maybe she really does want to know me." My father stood up and came around the desk, putting his hand on Marcus's shoulder. "Whatever you decide," he said, "I will support you, but I want you to be careful. I do not want to see you get hurt again." Marcus nodded, his jaw tight. "I know," he said. "I know." He left shortly after that, saying he needed to think, and I watched him drive away, his taillights disappearing into gray afternoon. My father stood at the window, his hands in his pockets, staring out at nothing. I came up beside him, and we stood there together in silence. "Do you think she means it?" I asked. "Do you think she really wants to be in his life?" My father sighed, a long, weary sound. "I do not know," he said. "I want to believe that people can change, that they can realize their mistakes and try to make amends. But I also know that people are complicated. They want things until they have them, and then they realize it is harder than they thought. Jennifer might genuinely want to know Marcus, or she might be feeling guilty and think that reaching out will make her feel better. Either way, Marcus is the one who will pay the price if it goes wrong." I thought about that for a long time after my father went back to his work. I thought about Jennifer, about what kind of person gives up their child, and then, 24 years later, decides they want them back. I thought about Marcus, about how much he had already been through, how much he had already lost. And I thought about our family, about how fragile the peace we had built really was. Marcus did not tell us what he decided right away. He came to family dinner the next Sunday, and he was quiet, picking at his food, barely participating in the conversation. My mother kept glancing at him, Worry etched into every line of her face, but she did not push. We had all learned, over the past few months, that pushing Marcus only made him pull away. It was not until we were cleaning up, my mother washing dishes, and me drying them, that Marcus finally spoke. "I am going to meet her," he said from the doorway, and my mother's hand stilled in the soapy water. I have to know if she is serious this time." My mother turned around, her hands dripping, soap bubbles sliding down her wrists, when she asked, "Next Saturday. She want me to come to her house, meet her family. She said her kids know about me now, and they want to meet me too." My mother dried her hands on a dish towel, her movements slow and deliberate. "Do you want one of us to come with you?" she asked. Marcus shook his head. "No, I need to do this on my own. But thank you. Thank you for offering." My mother went to him and hugged him, and he hugged her back, and I saw her close her eyes, her face pressed against his shoulder, and I knew she was praying that this would not break him, that he would come back to us whole. The week leading up to Saturday was tense. Marcus called a few times, ostensibly talk about other things, but I could hear the anxiety in his voice, the way his senses trailed off, the long pauses where he seemed to be somewhere else entirely. My mother cooked constantly, filling the freezer with casseroles and soups, her way of keeping her hands busy, so her mind would not spiral. My father was quieter than usual, spending long hours in his study, and I wondered if he was regretting giving Marcus that folder, regretting setting all of this in motion. Saturday came, cold and bright, the sun glinting off the frost that covered everything. Marcus texted me that morning, a simple message that said, "Wish me luck." I texted back, "You got this." Even though I was not sure he did, even though I was not sure any of us did, the hours crawled by. I tried to distract myself with homework, with television, with anything that would keep me from checking my phone every 5 minutes. My parents were no better. My mother cleaned the house from top to bottom, scrubbing floors that were already clean, dusting surfaces that had no dust. My father pretended to read, but I saw him staring at the same page for over an hour, not turning it once. It was almost 6 in the evening when Marcus finally called. My mother answered on the first ring, putting it on speaker so we could all hear. "Marcus," she said, her voice tight with worry. "How did it go?" There was a long pause, and I could hear traffic in the background, the whoosh of cars passing, the distant wail of a siren. "It was," Marcus said, and then he stopped. "It was complicated." "What does that mean?" my father asked, leaning forward. "It means," Marcus said, and I could hear the exhaustion in his voice, "it means that Jennifer is trying. She really is. She introduced me to her husband, Tom, and he was nice. Awkward, but nice. And her kids, my half-siblings, I guess, they were curious and asked a lot of questions. And Jennifer," she apologized. She cried and said she was sorry for turning me away, that she panicked, that she was scared of what it would mean for her family. "That sounds positive," my mother said cautiously. "It was," Marcus said, until Tom pulled me aside and told me that Jennifer has been struggling with depression, that she has been fixated on me for months, that her therapist thinks she is trying to fix her past mistakes instead of dealing with her present problems. He said he is supportive of her getting to know me, but he wanted me to know what I was getting into, that it might not be about me at all, that it might just be about her trying to feel better about herself. "Oh, Marcus," my mother whispered. "So I do not know," Marcus said. "I do not know if I should keep seeing her, keep trying to build a relationship, or if I should walk away before I get in too deep. Because Tom is right. I can feel it. She is not really seeing me. She is seeing the baby she gave up, the mistake she made. She is trying to rewrite history, and I am just a prop in her story. What do you want to do?" my father asked. "I want," Marcus said, and his voice cracked, "I want to come home. I want to be with my real family. The people who have always been there for me, even when I did not deserve it." My mother started crying, tears streaming down her face, and my father reached over and took her hand. "Come home," my father said. "Come home, son." Marcus did come home that night. He showed up around 8, looking drained and hollow, and my mother made him sit down at the kitchen table while she heated up leftovers. He ate mechanically, not really tasting anything, and then he went into the living room and collapsed on the couch. I sat down next to him, and we watched some mindless action movie, not really paying attention, just being together. "I think I am done," Marcus said during commercial break. "I think I am done looking for something that does not exist. Jennifer is not my mother. She is just a woman who gave birth to me, and that is okay. I do not need her to be anything more than that." I nodded, not sure what to say. Marcus looked at me, and I saw something in his eyes that I had not seen before, something like peace. "I am sorry," he said, "for everything. For being a jerk when we were growing up, for taking everything for granted, for making you feel like you did not matter. You do not have to apologize," I said. "Yes, I do," Marcus said, "because you did matter. You do matter. You are my brother, and I love you, and I should have told you that a long time ago." I felt my throat tighten, and I blinked back tears. "I love you too," I said, "and I am glad you are home." We sat there for a while longer, and then my parents came in and joined us, my mother sitting on Marcus's other side, and my father taking the recliner. And we watched the rest of the movie together. The four of us, a family that had been broken and put back together, not perfect, but real. The months that followed were some of the best our family had ever had. It was strange, in a way, how something that had nearly destroyed us ended up making us stronger. We talked more, laughed more, spent more time together. Marcus came over for dinner at least twice a week, and sometimes he would just show up on a random Tuesday evening, saying he was in the neighborhood and wanted to say hi. My mother would light up every time she saw his car pull into the driveway, and my father would clap him on the back and ask about work, about his apartment, about his life. As for me, I enrolled in a trade school program for electrical work. It turned out I loved it, loved the precision of it, the way everything had to be just right or it would not work. I loved the satisfaction of fixing something that was broken, of making something function the way it was supposed to. My parents came to my graduation from the first level of the program, and they were so proud, taking pictures and embarrassing me in front of my classmates. But I did not really mind. It felt good to have them there, to have them see me succeeding at something I had chosen for myself. Marcus started dating someone, a woman named Claire who worked in his office. She was smart and funny and did not take any of his nonsense, and we all liked her immediately. He brought her to family dinner one Sunday in March, and I could see how nervous he was, how much he wanted us to prove. My mother interrogated her gently, asking about her family, her job, her hobbies, and Claire answered everything with grace and humor. By the end of the night, my mother was already planning their wedding in her head, and Marcus was rolling his eyes but smiling. It was in April, almost 7 months after the initial revelation, when Marcus brought up Jennifer again. We were all sitting in the backyard, enjoying the first truly warm day of spring. The air smelled like fresh-cut grass and blooming flowers, and the sun was warm on my skin. My father was grilling burgers, the smoke rising in lazy spirals, and my mother was setting out plates and condiments on the picnic table. Claire was there too, sitting next to Marcus on the old wooden bench, her hand in his. "I got another message from Jennifer," Marcus said, and we all went quiet. She said she understands if I do not want to see her again, but she wanted me to know that she is getting help. She is seeing a therapist regularly, working through her issues. And she said that if I ever change my mind, if I ever want to have a relationship with her, she will be there. "How do you feel about that?" my mother asked, her voice carefully neutral. Marcus shrugged, but I could see the tension in his shoulders. "I feel okay," he said. "I do not think I want to pursue a relationship with her right now. Maybe not ever. But I appreciate that she is trying to get better. And I appreciate that she is giving me space to make my own decision. That is very mature of you," my father said, flipping a burger. "I am proud of you, son." Marcus smiled. It was a real smile, warm and genuine. "Thanks, Dad." We ate our burgers and talked about other things, lighter things, and the conversation flowed easily. Claire fit in seamlessly, laughing at my father's terrible jokes and complimenting my mother's potato salad. And I looked around at all of them, at this family that had been through so much, and I felt a deep sense of gratitude. We were not perfect. We had our scars, our secrets, our regrets. But we were together, and we were trying, and that was enough. As the sun started to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Marcus stood up and cleared his throat. He looked nervous again, his hand fidgeting with his napkin. "I have something I want to say," he announced, and we all turned to look at him. Claire was smiling, like she knew what was coming, and I felt a flutter of anticipation in my chest. "I have been thinking a lot about family," Marcus said, "about what it means, about what makes someone family. And I realize that family is not about blood. It is not about biology or genetics or who gave birth to you. Family is about the people who show up for you, who love you even when you are difficult, who stick with you through the hard times. And you all," he said, looking at each of us in turn, "you are my family. You have always been my family. And I am sorry it took me so long to really understand that." My mother was crying again, but this time they were happy tears. She got up and went to Marcus, hugging him tightly, and he hugged her back, lifting her slightly off the ground. My father joined them, wrapping his arms around both of them, and then Claire pulled me up and pushed me toward them, and suddenly we were all in a group hug, laughing and crying and holding on to each other. When we finally pulled apart, my father raised his beer bottle. "To family," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "To the family we choose and the family that chooses us." "To family," we all echoed, clinking our bottles and glasses together. The rest of the evening passed in a warm, comfortable haze. We sat around the picnic table as the stars came out, telling stories and making plans for the future. Marcus and Claire talked about maybe moving in together, and my mother immediately started offering decorating advice. My father told embarrassing stories about Marcus and me when we were kids, and we groaned and protested, but secretly loved it. And I just sat there, soaking it all in, feeling more content than I had in years. It was late when Marcus and Claire finally left, and my parents and I cleaned up the backyard, carrying plates and bottles inside, folding up the tablecloth. The house was quiet except for the sound of running water as my mother washed dishes, and the clink of bottles as my father took out the recycling. I dried the dishes and put them away, and we worked in comfortable silence, the kind of silence that only comes when people are truly at ease with each other. Before I went to bed, I stopped by my parents' room. They were getting ready for bed, my mother brushing her hair at the vanity, and my father already under the covers, reading a book. I knocked on the doorframe, and they both looked up. "I just want to say thank you," I said, "for everything, for being honest with us, even though it was hard, for holding us together when we were falling apart, for being good parents." My mother set down her brush and came over to me, cupping my face in her hands. "You do not have to thank us," she said. "Being your parents is the greatest privilege of our lives. Both of you." I hugged her, and then I hugged my father, and then I went to my room and lay down in my bed, staring at the ceiling. I thought about how much had changed since that Tuesday evening in September. I thought about the anger and resentment I had carried for so long, and how it had evaporated once I understood the truth. I thought about Marcus, about his journey to find himself and his place in the world. And I thought about my parents, about the burden they had carried, trying to do right by a child who was not biologically theirs, trying to make up for a situation that was not their fault. And I realized that we were all just doing the best we could. We were all just trying to love each other, to be there for each other, to build something that would last. And maybe that was what family really was. Not perfection, not some idealized version of what a family should be, but just people who kept showing up, kept trying, kept loving even when it was hard. Summer came, hot and humid, and with it came more changes. I got my first real job as an apprentice electrician, working for a small company that did residential and commercial work. The hours were long and the work was hard, but I loved it. I loved coming home at the end of the day with sore muscles and dirty hands, feeling like I had accomplished something real and tangible. Marcus and Claire did move in together, into a bigger apartment with 2 bedrooms and a balcony that overlooked the park. They had us over for a housewarming party, and the place was packed with their friends and co-workers, all of them laughing and drinking and having a good time. I watched Marcus move through the crowd, his arm around Claire, and I saw how happy he was, how settled. He had found his place, his people, his purpose. My parents were doing well, too. My father had cut back on his hours at work, spending more time at home, more time with my mother. They had started taking walks together in the evenings, holding hands like teenagers. And sometimes I would see them dancing in the kitchen to old songs on the radio. It was sweet and a little embarrassing, but mostly just made me happy. They deserved this, deserved to enjoy each other after all they had been through. It was in August, almost a full year after the revelation, when we got unexpected news. Marcus called me on a Wednesday afternoon, his voice excited and breathless. "You are not going to believe this," he said. "Claire is pregnant. We are having a baby." I felt a surge of joy so strong it almost knocked me over. "That is amazing," I said. "Congratulations." "When is she due?" "February," Marcus said. "We just found out yesterday. We have not told Mom and Dad yet. We want to tell them in person. Can you come over for dinner on Friday? We are going to tell them then." "Of course," I said. I would not miss it. Friday came, and we all gathered at Marcus and Claire's apartment. My mother had brought a casserole, because of course she had, and my father had brought a bottle of wine. We sat around their small dining table, eating and talking, and I could see Marcus and Claire exchanging glances, building up the courage to share their news. Finally, after we had finished eating and were just sitting there with our coffee and dessert, Marcus stood up. He took Claire's hand and pulled her up next to him, and they stood there, both of them grinning like idiots. "We have something to tell you," Marcus said. My mother's eyes went wide, and she pressed her hand to her chest. "You are getting married," she said. Marcus laughed. "Not yet," he said, "but we are having a baby." For a moment, there was complete silence, and then my mother let out a shriek of joy and jumped up, nearly knocking over a chair. She ran around the table and hugged them both, crying and laughing at the same time. My father was right behind her, shaking Marcus's hand, and then pulling him into a hug, clapping him on the back. And I just sat there, grinning, watching my family celebrate this new beginning. "You are going to be a grandfather," my mother said to my father, her voice full of wonder. "And I am going to be a grandmother. And I am going to be an uncle," I added, and everyone laughed. We spent the rest of the evening talking about baby names and nursery colors, and all the things that new parents worry about. My mother was already planning baby showers and offering to babysit whenever they needed. My father was talking about setting up a college fund. And I was just happy. Happy for Marcus and Claire, happy for all of us. As we were leaving, Marcus walked me to my car. The night air was cool and pleasant, a relief from the heat of the day, and the streetlights cast long shadows on the pavement. "Thanks for being here," Marcus said. "It means a lot. I would not be anywhere else," I said. "I am really happy for you, man." Marcus smiled, and then his expression turned more serious. "You know," he said, "I have been thinking about what kind of father I want to be, and I realize that I want to be like Dad. Not perfect, but present. Not always right, but always trying. And I want my kid to know, from day one, that they are loved and wanted and that they belong." "They will," I said. "You are going to be a great dad." Marcus nodded, and I could see the emotion in his eyes. "I hope so," he said. "I really hope so." I drove home that night feeling lighter than I had in a long time. The future felt bright and full of possibility. We had been through so much, our family, but we had come out the other side intact. More than intact. We had come out stronger, more honest, more connected. The months passed quickly. Claire's belly grew, and my mother fussed over her constantly, making sure she was eating enough, resting enough, taking her vitamins. Marcus was nervous and excited in equal measure, reading parenting books and watching videos and asking my father a million questions. And I started taking on more responsibility at work, getting my own projects, building my reputation. It was a cold night in February when I got the call. I was at home watching television when my phone rang. It was Marcus, and his voice was shaking. "It is time," he said. "We are at the hospital. The baby is coming." "I will be right there," I said, grabbing my keys and my jacket. The hospital was bright and sterile, smelling like disinfectant and floor wax. I found my parents in the waiting room, my mother pacing back and forth, my father sitting with his elbows on his knees, his hands clasped together. They looked up when they saw me, and my mother immediately came over and hugged me. "How is she?" I asked. "She is doing great," my mother said. "Marcus is with her." It should not be too much longer. We waited, the three of us, drinking bad coffee from the vending machine and making small talk to pass the time. The minutes felt like hours, each one stretching out impossibly long. And then finally, Marcus appeared in the doorway, still wearing his scrubs, his face flushed and his eyes bright with tears. "It is a girl," he said, his voice breaking. "We have a daughter." My mother burst into tears, and my father stood up and hugged Marcus, and I felt my own eyes getting wet. "Can we see her?" my mother asked. Marcus nodded. "Come on." He led us down the hallway to a room where Claire was lying in bed, looking exhausted but radiant, and in her arms, wrapped in a pink blanket, was the tiniest, most perfect baby I had ever seen. She had a little tuft of dark hair and the smallest fingers, and when she yawned, it was the most adorable thing I had ever witnessed. "Everyone," Marcus said, his voice full of pride, "this is Emma, Emma Rose." My mother went over and looked down at the baby, tears streaming down her face. "She is perfect," she whispered. "She is absolutely perfect." My father stood next to her, his arm around her shoulders, and they both just stared at Emma with expressions of pure love. And I came over too, looking down at my niece, at this tiny person who was the newest member of our family. "Do you want to hold her?" Claire asked me, and I nodded, even though I was terrified I would drop her or break her or do something wrong. But Claire showed me how to support her head, how to cradle her in my arms, and then Emma was there, warm and solid and real, looking up at me with unfocused eyes. "Hey, Emma," I said softly. "I am your uncle, and I am going to spoil you rotten." Everyone laughed, and I carefully handed Emma to my mother, who held her like she was made of glass, cooing and making soft noises. My father took his turn next, and he looked so gentle, so tender, holding this tiny baby in his big, work-roughened hands. We stayed for a while, taking turns holding Emma, talking in hushed voices, marveling at her tiny features. And as I watched my family, as I saw the love and joy on everyone's faces, I thought about how far we had come. A year and a half ago, we had been broken, fractured by secrets and lies, but we had fought our way back to each other. We had chosen to be a family, not because we had to, but because we wanted to, and now there was Emma, this perfect little person who would grow up knowing she was loved, knowing she belonged, knowing that family was not about biology or blood, but about the people who showed up, who cared, who stayed. Marcus came over and stood next to me, and we watched our parents fuss over Emma together. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For what?" I asked. "For being my brother," he said. "For sticking with me even when I was being an idiot. For being part of this family." I smiled and put my arm around his shoulders. "Always," I said, "we are in this together." And we were. We were a family, messy and complicated and imperfect, but real. We were a family that had been tested and had survived. We were a family that had learned that love was not something you were born into, but something you chose every single day. As I left the hospital that night, walking out into the cold February air, I looked up at the stars and felt a sense of peace settle over me. The past year had been hard, maybe the hardest of my life, but it had also been transformative. It had taught me about forgiveness, about resilience, about what really mattered. And what really mattered was this: family, love, connection, the people who showed up when things got hard, the people who chose you, and who you chose in return. I got in my car and drove home, and as I pulled into the driveway, I saw the lights on the house, warm and welcoming, and I knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, no matter what surprises life had in store, we would face them together, because that was what families did. They showed up, they stayed, they loved, and we were a family in every way that mattered.